Christmas is, meant to be a season of celebration, right? It's, thinking about the lyrics, the songs that we just sang, joy to the world, right? All heaven and all creation sing, joyful, joyful we adore thee. There's this celebratory moment to Christmas, this celebration of something important that has happened, something significant that has happened, because something worthy of celebrating has happened. And this morning, we're gonna spend some time talking about what exactly it is that has happened at Christmas that is so worthy of our celebration, that is so worthy of us celebrating what God has done. What has made it this whole season worthy of being a season of celebration? We're gonna do that by looking at Isaiah chapter 9. And so if you want, you can open up there with us to Isaiah chapter 9, and we're diving in there in a second. But we're gonna see that throughout the Old Testament, we know that there's at least 54 prophecies about Jesus that we see fulfilled from the Old Testament and the New Testament. Matthew cites 54 different prophecies in his gospel that Jesus fulfills. And so we know the number is at least 54 that have been fulfilled by Jesus. And probably the most iconic of these prophecies, especially of the Christmas prophecies, is Isaiah chapter 9. It's the one that we all think of when we think of, if you think of a Christmas prophecy, we've all got a favorite Christmas prophecy, right? This is the one. This is the one that stands out to us. Verse 6 gives us the famous, for to us a child is born, to us a son has been given. He will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. That is basically, the Christmas passage. That is basically the Christmas prophecy from the book of Isaiah. And for us this morning, what I want us to do is we're gonna look through all of Isaiah 9, or the first 7 verses of it, and we're gonna think about hopefully how it can help us understand what makes Christmas so worthy of celebration. So worthy of celebrating. So this is what it says, Isaiah chapter 9, starting in verse 1. It says, nevertheless, there will be no more gloom for those who were in distress. In the past, he humbled the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, but in the future, he will honor Galilee of the nations by the way of the sea beyond the Jordan. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned. You have enlarged the nation and increased their joy. They rejoice before you as people rejoice at the harvest, as warriors rejoice when dividing the plunder. For as in the day of Midian's defeat, you have shattered the yoke that burdens them, the bar across their shoulders, the rod of their oppressor. Every warrior's boot used in battle and every garment rolled in blood will be destined for burning, will be fuel for the fire. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders. And he will be called a Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the greatness of his government and peace there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. Isaiah gave us a pretty striking picture, a pretty striking image that the people have seen a great light. The people have seen a great light. A light has dawned on those living in the land of deep darkness. The people are rejoicing and celebrating. Why? Because in verse 4, what does he say? For as in the day of Midian's defeat, you have shattered the yoke that burdens them, the bar across their shoulders, the rod of their oppressor. Every boot for battle and every bloody garment, Isaiah says, becomes fuel for the fire. To the people in Isaiah's audience, each of those would have looked like completely normal solutions to a problem that you might face in life. They would have looked like completely normal ways to overcome an obstacle in their lives. Or when they met an obstacle on their farm, it would have been totally normal. They wouldn't have batted an eye at getting out the yoke and working the yoke to harvest their farm. When they ran into an obstacle in their labor, they wouldn't have thought twice about placing a bar across their shoulders to put heavy weights or objects or water, whatever is heavy, so they could carry it some distance before them. When they met an obstacle in their lives, they wouldn't have been surprised to taste the sting of the rod of their oppressor. When they met an obstacle between two parties, they wouldn't have been surprised to have to put on the boots of war, to march off into battle, to wear the bloody garments that were left over after having returned. And for us, the challenge is those are obviously not normal solutions to our obstacles for the most part. Those are not our normal solutions to the problems that we face, but they were normal to them. Right? Half the stories we read in the Old Testament basically involve one of those things: a yoke, a bar, a rod, boots for war, or some bloody garments, right? I just finished the book of Judges in my own reading time, very slowly, I might add. But go read the book of Judges, and that is all that it is. It's stories about yokes and bars and rods and bloody garments and boots for war. That is the premise of the story. We see over and over again that this was normal for them. This was the standard for them. But what happens to the normal, to the standard way of doing things? Well, Isaiah said they have been shattered. They have been burned up. They have become fuel for the fire. Why? For to us a child is given. For unto us a son is given. At Christmas, we are celebrating the shattering of the yoke, celebrating the shattering of the bar, celebrating the shattering of the rod. We are celebrating the burning of the boots and the bloody garments. Why? Because Jesus has come. Because God has made his dwelling among us. Because Jesus' arrival offers us a new way. It offers us a new direction, a new way in life. Isaiah 9 follows almost perfectly the model of a traditional birth announcement in the ancient world, okay? It's the equivalent of our saying, the baby weighs 8 pounds, 6 ounces, and the mother and the baby are healthy. Or it's the equivalent of the Instagram post where the baby is in the wrapped tightly in the swaddle, in the bassinet with a little hat on in the hospital, right? But it's a lot more dramatic than that. Because my guess is I've seen a lot of your guys' baby announcements, okay? And none of them ended with, and the boots of war are destined for burning, right? That's not how we end our birth announcements. But, let's think about this. This is an announcement of a new child being born, of a new heir to the throne, of a new king to come. It's an announcement of a new way of doing things. And it's a ridiculous way. Okay, let's be honest for a second. It's a crazy way. The rod, the yoke is shattered, the bar, the rod, the boots are burned, the bloody garments, because of a baby. Because of a baby, everything has changed. It's easy. We are so used to the picture of Christmas that I think we lose track of how crazy this is. We all are so used to the image. We've all got that little nativity somewhere around our house, right? With the baby Jesus in a manger and Mary standing right next to him and a shepherd standing where Joseph is supposed to be. Why? Because we lost Joseph at some point in time and the shepherd will do, right? We're used to this picture. We're used to this image. We're used to this idea. And yet think about how crazy this is for a second. As Bill talked about last week, the Son of the Most High, our wonderful counselor, our mighty God, our everlasting Father, our Prince of Peace, the Word itself becoming flesh, as John says, as a baby before us. The theologian Ricky Bobby just understood the paradox so well in Talladega Nights. He said, "Dear 8 pounds, 6 ounce newborn infant Jesus, don't even know a word yet, just a little infant so cuddly, but still omnipotent." And here's the thing. Here's the newborn infant Jesus at Christmas. Don't even know a word yet. Just a little infant so cuddly, But what does Isaiah say? Isaiah says, here in this infant is your new way. Here in this infant is your wonderful counselor. Here is your mighty God. Here is your everlasting Father. Here is your Prince of Peace. Not in the halls of King Herod, not in the imperial palace on the Palatine Hill in Rome, but in a manger in a podunk town on the very fringes of the empire. One commentator put it so perfectly, I think, when they said, God's will for justice, righteousness, and peace is made flesh in the weakest of human creatures, a little baby. This is the paradox of Christmas, that out of all the possible solutions, God chose a baby. God chose to take on flesh and make his dwelling among us, not in the form of some all-powerful despotic king, not in the form of some priest who stands in power between God and his people, not in the form of some skilled soldier or general to lead his people into battle, but as a baby who don't even know a word yet. And because of the arrival of this baby, we rejoice, Isaiah says. We rejoice like people rejoice at the harvest, like warriors when they divide their plunder. Right? Because of the arrival of this baby, the old way of doing things, the old way of overcoming our obstacles has been shattered. They've been shattered and they've been burned. Rather than being burdened by a heavy yoke, rather than carrying around a weight on a bar across their shoulders, rather than being beaten down by their oppressors, rather than wearing the boots for war, rather than wearing the bloody garments that are left over afterwards, Isaiah said to these people, instead of doing those things, turn now to the baby. Turn to the child who has been born. Turn to the son who has been given. For you, you've maybe run into an obstacle in your life. You're trying to get your family, whether it's your husband, your wife, your kids, your grandkids, your parents, whatever it is, you're trying to get them to a place of stability. And the only solution that you can imagine for yourself is to put on the yoke yourself, to pull them, to drag them through your own power and your own strength and your own ability to the place you think they're supposed to be. You've run into an obstacle in your life trying to make enough money to live out your American dream, to go on vacation, to keep up with your neighbors, to buy a house, to retire. And so you keep putting more and more weight on the bar across your shoulders. More hours in the office, more emails at home, maybe even having to carry a second job or a side hustle to try to make it work because you can't see another way besides putting more weight, more of a burden on your own shoulders each and every day. You run into an obstacle in life trying to protect what is yours. To protect, your stuff, your friends, your family, protecting them from a world that it is easy to feel like is chasing after them. So you lace up your boots for war. You're constantly ready to fight, lashing out, not out of anger, but out of fear. You feel the weight of needing to protect what you've worked so hard for, to protect your family and their future. And the only thing you can imagine to do is to get ready for battle, to put on the boots for war, to march off and fight. Maybe like me, you've run into an obstacle in life trying to just get through a challenging or a tiring or a different season, right? For many of you, my wife is in grad school right now. She's going to school, so she's going to school at night. She's working a bunch of hours, seeing clients. We've got the kids. It's a chaotic time of life. Doesn't mean it's bad. It's just chaotic. It's different. And I know for myself, you'll have to ask my wife if she'll confirm this is true, but I don't like to complain about things, okay? At least not in our lives. I don't like to complain about things. My usual MO is to kind of just grit my teeth and push through it, right? Like I'll just endure it. I won't fix the problem in the first place. And I realized for myself, what I do is I put on the bloody garments over and over again. Not literally, don't worry, but like I put on the bloody garments. I'm unwilling most of the time or oftentimes to make a change, to change my circumstances. What I do is I choke it down. I put on the same face every day. I say, it is what it is. And as an example, we can all point and laugh at me about this, but for the past few months, I've had the worst pain in my teeth. I'm sure none of us can relate to what that's like, okay? I eat something, it hurts. I drink something hot, it hurts. I drink something cold, it hurts, right? And what did I do? My solution was just grind my teeth, grit down, and I'm gonna be okay. And finally one day, my wife says, you should go to the dentist. And voila, my teeth don't hurt anymore. It's the weirdest thing. But I've realized for myself that all I could do, all I could imagine myself doing was ignoring the problem, was trying to just choke down, just push through in this moment until it built up to a point that I couldn't take it anymore. For you've put on the yoke, you've put on the heavy bar, you've felt the sting of the rod, you've laced up your boots for war, you kept wearing the bloody garments, but now you're realizing you're tired, you're exhausted, you're run down. And Isaiah, I think, has something he said for you this morning. That to us, a child is born, to us a son is given, to you a child is born, to you a son has been given. Because of Christmas, because of the incarnation, because of Jesus, the word made flesh among us, you don't have to live like that anymore. That way, the old way has been shattered and it has been burned, and the new way is here. A new way has been offered to you. And in this new way, in Jesus' way, we have access to everything that we might need. Access to everything we might need to face the obstacles and challenges we see in life. Isaiah gives Jesus 4 titles in Isaiah 9. And the first is the title of a wonderful counselor. That Jesus, whatever it is you are facing in life, Jesus is there for you as your wonderful counselor. And the picture from Isaiah is the picture of, members of a king's council. It's easy for us, I think, we hear the word counselor in the modern world and we think therapist, right? The reality is what Isaiah was talking about in this moment was like the small council for where a queen might meet with her advisors and make plans for war or the economy or some political issue going on in the world. But instead of getting advice from Tyrion Lannister, you're getting advice from Jesus. Right? You're getting advice from a wonderful counselor. You're getting the guidance from the Word who took on flesh, from Emmanuel, from God with us. But you have to be willing to seek it out. You have to be willing to search for it. The Psalms are filled with the prayers and the songs of the psalmist over and over again, repeating one particular phrase. They regularly will say, "Show me your ways. Teach me your ways." It's one of the constant prayers of the Psalms, and I think it should be one of our constant prayers as well. Right? Show us your ways, God. Teach us your ways, God. I'm inclined to think that Jesus, it's rare for Jesus to offer us unsolicited guidance. When you look through the Gospels, you see story after story of Jesus kind of moseying along, doing what he's doing, and people interrupt him to receive healing or wisdom or guidance. Not always. There's plenty of times that Jesus interrupts our own lives, but I think they're fewer and far between. Much more common is that when we receive the guidance of Jesus, it's because we sought it out. It's because we spent time in prayer saying, "God, show me your ways." We spent time in scripture reading and applying it to our lives. We spent time in community sharing and listening and surrounding ourselves with other people who are trying to grow to be more like Jesus alongside of us. On Wednesday, this past Wednesday night, Ryan was at school and Jude and Luca were asleep upstairs. And so I come downstairs and I kind of get my Bible out of my bag like I do most nights. And I sat down on the couch and I opened up to read that night. And I was in Matthew 23. And I saw the title of the little section I was in. And the title was 7 Woes to Teachers of the Law and Pharisees. And I thought, I do not want to do that right now, okay? And so I closed my Bible and I turned on the TV. And I start flipping through, trying to find something, and I decided, like a couple minutes into that, I realized, what am I doing? Okay, this is what I do. This is my routine. This is my rhythm. Why would I not do this now? So I paused the TV. I went back to the 7 woes for the teachers and Pharisees. And it's a long chunk. I was really not looking forward to it. And I get through it, and I was struck by something. There's a verse that I was reading through it, and I've read it countless times, I'm sure, but it struck me in a new way. And in verse 25, Jesus said, you clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they are full of greed and self-indulgence. And I was convicted in that moment. I was convicted because one, if you walk over to my office, you will find on my desk a cup that is clean on the outside and on the inside is brown, seasoned, I like to say, from the stains of my coffee. But I was also convicted because I realized it's easy for me to be worried about what's going on the outside. I have to stand up here and talk to high school students every week, and I have to make sure that I present something on the outside. I stand up here every so often, I preach, and I have to care about what's going on the outside. It's easy to fall for me into the trap of caring more about that than what's going on the inside. It was a gentle correction. It was a gentle guidance from Jesus. It was, a carefully delivered bit of guidance, not harsh, it didn't hurt. It's just a gentle reminder. But what I know is that I never would have received that guidance if I hadn't sought it out. I never would have received that guidance if I hadn't taken the time for it in the first place. Sometimes you need the guidance of a wonderful counselor in your lives. And sometimes the obstacle that you're facing, what you need is Jesus there as your mighty God. Their wonderful counselor offers you guidance, but what you need right now is the offer of power from your mighty God. Scripture is filled with stories, absolutely filled with stories of people overcoming obstacles through the power of God, right? You have Moses who turns his staff into a snake. You have Gideon who leads a tiny fraction of an army to defeat the Midianites. David was a shepherd boy who defeated a giant. We love these stories. Even at Christmas, we see stories of God's power. Mary was a virgin who is with child. Elizabeth is a woman who thinks she's far too old to have a baby, and yet now she gives birth to John the Baptist. We see God's power throughout Scripture, and that doesn't mean that you don't do anything, okay? Jesus is not like a cheat code. There's still work to be done on this front. Mary is such a great example of this. Think about the story of Mary. It is the story of God's power. And I want one of you to get to heaven and tell Mary she didn't do anything along the way. She carried Jesus 9 months in the womb. She gave birth to Jesus. She raised Jesus. She watched Jesus be crucified and buried. She did a lot. Just because God's power was at work doesn't mean you don't do anything. In fact, it often means that there is work for you to do. It's so easy for us. We've all prayed the prayer at some point in time. Some of us, it was a lot longer ago than others, but we've all failed a test and known we've failed it, right? And we've all had the experience of praying that God would change that fact. And so often that's how we imagine God's power at work, that he will miraculously intervene to save us from our own poor choices. God's power isn't a cheat. Jesus' power isn't a cheat code to get us out of trouble. It's a constant reminder that even in the obstacles we face, we aren't responsible for the saving work of Jesus. Right? Paul said that we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that this all-surpassing power is from God and not from us. Jesus' power, and Jesus is powerful, but Jesus' power is not to build us up. It's to build up the body, to build up Christ. And so whatever obstacles you're facing in life, you might be saying right now, you need Jesus to be your mighty God in this moment. Right? You need him to give you his power to overcome, to endure, to survive, whatever it might be. Maybe you're feeling the third description Isaiah gives, that you need Jesus there as your everlasting Father. Psalm 103:13 says that as a father has compassion on his children, so the Lord has compassion on those who fear him. And Jude has this book that we used to read more often called The Rabbit Listened. And if you're looking for cute like books to buy kids for Christmas, check the Amazon link in my bio. Just kidding, we don't have one. But it's a great little book. It's an adorable little book. And the premise is really simple. There's this kid named Taylor, and they built a tower out of these blocks, a great big tower. And some mean crows come and they knock the tower over. And the rest of the book is different animals coming by to give Taylor advice on how to respond to this moment. And so a chicken comes by and urges Taylor to talk about it. A bear comes by and urges Taylor to be angry and roar about it. A snake comes by and urges Taylor to get revenge against the crows for what they've done. And then the rabbit comes by. And the rabbit sits down, and all the rabbit does is listen. The rabbit listens to Taylor, listens to the problems, and Taylor then processes through their emotions in this moment alongside their friend, the rabbit. And sometimes I think we don't want to admit it, but sometimes what we need from Jesus is for him to sit with us. That what we need is for Jesus to sit with us and to listen to us with compassion in the same way. With the compassion of a father who loves us and cares deeply for us. And I know that for many of you this morning, when you hear the phrase everlasting Father, your mind goes 1,000 different places. You imagine your own dad, your own father, in good ways and in bad. So often people they think about the struggles that their father is vengeful or mean, or their father was distant and closed off, or their father was absent or uncaring. And it is so easy for us, whether we want to accept it or not, to take those same descriptions we have of our earthly father and apply them to our everlasting Father. To say that these must be the same descriptions that we have of Jesus, but that isn't who we see described in Scripture. And Jesus isn't vengeful or mean. Jesus isn't distant or closed off. Jesus isn't absent or uncaring. What we see is Jesus is compassionate. And maybe there's an obstacle, there's a challenge in your life that you are facing right now. And what you need is the compassion of Jesus in this moment, the compassion of your everlasting Father, to be able to just sit with him, to know that he is there with you, that he is listening to you, that he chose you, that he came down to earth to be close to you. It might not make the obstacles go away. It might not make the challenges go away, but it can change how we see them in front of us. And in the same vein, we see the final description that Isaiah gave, that Jesus is our Prince of Peace. And right now, maybe you feel like you need more than anything else for Jesus to offer you his peace. For Jesus to offer you his shalom, his wholeness of life. You don't need guidance, you don't need power, you don't need compassion. You just need peace and stability and to feel secure for a moment. You need Jesus to be with you in the wind and the waves, as Bill talked about last week, that he would be able to say, just be still. To calm the storms, the chaos of your life, to bring peace into your life. Isaiah said for us, for to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Mighty Counselor, Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. What I want you to do for a moment is I want to invite you to take a second and to think about an obstacle in your own life right now, a challenge in your own life right now. And I know that it's Christmas time, and this is a time for not doing that, right, where we ignore those things. But just for a second, let's think about what are the obstacles and the challenges that we are facing in life right now? What are the challenges that are in front of us that are challenging us right now? You're trying with all your strength to care for your spouse. You're trying with all your energy and your focus to get by in life. You're trying with all your might to protect what is yours. You're trying with all your grit and all your determination to endure in this season. And my invitation for you this morning is to decide, I'm not going to choose the old way of doing it. I'm not going to turn to the heavy yoke. I'm not going to turn to the bar across my shoulders. I'm not going to turn to the rod. I'm not going to turn to the boots for war. I'm not going to turn to the bloody garments. I'm going to choose the new way. For to us a child is born, to us a son has been given. That you can turn to the guidance of a wonderful counselor, that you can turn to the power of a mighty God, that you can turn to the compassion of an everlasting Father, that you can turn to the peace of the Prince of Peace. And so what we're going to do is we're going to close out our time this morning a little bit differently. The band is going to come out. And I want to invite you, don't lose that obstacle. Don't lose that challenge. Don't lose whatever that thing is that came to mind. And my guess is that there's something for each of us. And in a moment, you'll see the prayer team. We're going to have the prayer team come on up here as well to the front. And they're going to stand here in the front. And we're going to do something different. And it's going to feel awkward. And that's okay. That's totally fine. But I think different is good in this season. We're all used to the same thing every Christmas. So what we're going to do is I'm going to invite you in a moment. The band will kind of play behind us, and then they'll lead us in a final song. But I'm going to invite you to actually stand up at some point in this next moment and to come forward to a member of the prayer team and to say to them one of these things. I need the guidance of my wonderful counselor. I need the power of my mighty God. I need the compassion of my everlasting Father. I need the peace of my Prince of Peace. And someone on the prayer team will pray over you. They've got some prayers to pray over you. They'll pray through this moment with you. And you can go this season, go into this week knowing that the old way is gone, that a new way has been offered to you. So I'm going to invite you, let's take a moment. Let's pray together, and then the band will close us out at the end of our time. So feel free to come forward whenever you're ready.